I have a huge issue with martial artists telling people that they teach self-defense because they don't.
I had a high-ranking belt, Nicole, and I was assaulted after couple years of training. But at that time, I thought that I was invincible because at the dojo, I could flip 6'4", 220-pound men over my shoulder. I could block, what they were swinging at me. And I think what we need to remember is that that is a controlled environment.
In today's podcast, it's a special episode. We're going to talk about safety and self-defense. And I am really an advocate of personal wellness, which encompasses so many areas. And one of the probably least talked about areas is that of self-defense. So I'm excited to have guests Rob and Beth Andress here to join in the discussion. Rob and Beth, just a little bit about them. They're owners of Street Safe Self-Defense. Beth has a background in law enforcement and has run many street safe self-defense programs. Rob is a real estate broker and has over 38 years experience in the industry. And he also has a broad background in martial arts. So today is a gift to you, just so you can get some myth busting about martial arts versus self-defense. So they'll provide us with some tips and tricks that we can use. And also talking about urban warriors in the sense of people, a lot of us take public transportation now and then. So things to think about, and those urban warriors that are out there on the public transportation system. And then we'll talk a little bit about how you as an investor, as a landlord, may want to think about when you're interacting with a potential tenant. So with that, Rob and Beth, thank you so much for joining us here today. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having us on, Nicole. It's a pleasure being here for sure.
Hi, Nicole. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. All right, so let's jump right into it. So I mentioned a little bit about your background. Maybe, you are the experts of your background. Maybe you can touch a little bit upon, the thought of self-defense and also martial arts. A lot of people think, I'm going to do karate, I'm going to do jiu-jitsu, I'm going to do judo, and I'm going to take that guy out if somebody gets me. How is that? Is that reality? Do we see what we see on the movies? Is that what really happens out there?
No, not at all. Not at all. Martial arts today, especially martial arts in North America, has become so washed down for marketing purposes. So, Sensei Rob can give Billy a stripe on his belt. So Billy and Billy's mom will pay Sensei Rob another $20 so Billy can keep going on. And also, a big problem with North American martial arts today is very ego-induced. The sensei will show all of his kind of stuff that he's doing in a very static, non-threatening manner. And the students view this and they think, wow, this is amazing that this person can do all of this amazing stuff. And what the sensei never tells them is that, in a reality violent situation, you're facing a predator. You're facing a predator who has made a conscious decision to hurt you, who has made a informed decision that they can and are going to hurt you. And there's a big difference there. And I'm a proponent of martial arts. I study jiu-jitsu and I think martial arts is great, but I have a huge issue with martial artists telling people that they teach self-defense because they don't. They don't teach anything about self-defense. What they teach is battery. What they teach is how to hurt, maim, and kill. They don't teach anything to do with the reality or the legal, moral, or social obligations of self-defense.
Hey, and for me, Rob, I trained, you know that, and you kind of know the whole story that goes along with that. But I had a high-ranking belt, Nicole, and I was assaulted after couple years of training. But at that time, I thought that I was invincible because at the dojo, I could flip 6'4", 220-pound men over my shoulder. I could block, what they were swinging at me. And I think what we need to remember is that is a controlled environment.
Right.
And your training partner and you both have to go to work the next day. And, everybody is there to learn a sport. But when it comes to the real world, you don't know how your body is going to be able to react. And that rush of adrenaline that goes along with it while you're trying to remember which way your big toe should point and where your left hand goes and your right hand goes in order to, defend yourself from this guy that just grabbed you from behind. So there's a huge difference between, how you really react and how you may react in the dojo with a controlled partner.
Well, and in the dojo either, there's no stress, there's no fear induced, there's no adrenaline induced, there's no cortisol being dumped out of hormones, there's none of that. And when an individual who is trained in a safe environment, a static environment where he's working with a partner who knows what he is going to do and what she is going to do, it just creates a false sense of reality for people.
We can even take that out of martial arts and into the boxing gym. We have dealt with clients who have taken cardio kickboxing, right. Fitness kickboxing, and they're strong and for sure they have great cardio, and they have full extension on their kicks and their punches and that kind of thing. But those skills do not equate to self-defense. Like Rob said, when someone is determined that you are going to be a victim, and these people are often fighting for survival. They are in survival mode. They are trying to, take something from you for a reason, or, they've got a dangerous personality disorder that, your kick to the groin isn't going to dissuade. So, true self-defense can't be found in a martial arts dojo, can't be found in a boxing lesson, can't be found in a cardio kickboxing class, any of that. It really goes a lot deeper with the understanding of your own self and the environment around you and the people in it.
Well, if I can just take for a second before we go, and I just want to kind of jump onto the back of what you said, Beth. And Nicole, here's a reality for you. Within a dojo and in martial arts where they teach self-defense, they're teaching these methods that you are going to be mugged or jumped by a total stranger. Here's the reality. 90% of antisocial violence is going to come at you from somebody you know. Right. Someone who's supposed to care for you and love you. And they don't talk about that in the dojo. They don't talk about the moral trauma that occurs when someone faces an antisocial violent attack. They don't talk about how you're supposed to, or how should you respond to that. They don't talk about striking first. They don't talk about the situational awareness, the environmental awareness, the self-awareness, the behavioral awareness of the person that you're looking at. So it's such a big difference between the two.
Right.
And there's so many reasons why people should take a martial arts class, a cardio fitness class, boxing, all of that stuff. I absolutely do not want to discourage anybody from doing that, but just make sure self-defense is not the main reason that you're doing it for.
No, awesome comment. And one comment, because I've been in a dojo, and from my perspective of the dojo, when you're there, a lot of times is the focus on the respect between you and the other students. So you don't have, as you're talking about those biochemical responses, you're calm. Everybody's trying to respect each other. So nobody's anticipating anything and there's no fear. Everybody is acting in kind of, proper.
Proper, exactly.
Very respectful manner.
Exactly.
Following the etiquette, for sure.
Exactly.
For sure. So, which we know is not real life violence, right?
Right. And that kind of takes me to the next. So reality, in a real life situation, there's fear. And as Rob had mentioned, there's these biochemical responses, things that are happening. So can maybe you touch on that in terms of, when somebody is coming at you or has some kind of intent, or you sense some kind of intent, what's happening in that moment?
Well, the first thing that you're facing is the shock and disbelief of what's occurring. And the next thing that ends up happening now is fear starts becoming induced, because something now that you're having a difficult time to respond to. And now the fear starts to set in. And as this dominance and control starts to break down and starts to occur, pleading begins. And this is a very normal thing for people to do, especially with individuals they know. Why are you doing this? Don't do this to me. Please don't hurt me. I don't understand why you're doing this. And all that creates is higher violence within the occurrence, because this is all surrounding dominance and control. And it's horrifying. And, we can talk about, learning to do a reverse punch, a straight punch, a back fist, a side kick. We can talk about that till the sun goes down today. But the reality of it is, if you're facing, a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband or a wife or an uncle or an aunt or your next door neighbor that you're supposed to know, and all of a sudden they start beating on you because they're going to take one of three things, Nicole: your body, mm-hmm. your life, or your valuables. And it's that simple. How do you respond to that with training in an environment where everyone is respectful? It's impossible. So it really comes down to being aware, situationally, environmentally, self-aware of your own self. And behavioral awareness is something that is very rarely ever talked about, right? If, Beth and I are deeply in love. But if today, all of a sudden, my behavior goes sideways on Beth better be able to identify that this is not right, that something is wrong. And, she best at that point start becoming aware of what's happening in her environment, what's occurring around her, what's her options that are available to her. And these are the things that are never taught, within a dojo when it comes down to reality violence prevention.
So what happens when your body needs to respond to an event or, an interaction? Number one, Rob, your short-term memory, recall goes out the window.
It's gone.
And your initial reaction may be to override your intuition or your acknowledgement that something is happening here. And all of that is physiological. You get an adrenaline rush, you get a cortisol dump, your body starts to react in ways that you may not be able to control, because your brain doesn't have that blueprint on how to manage those events, because they've never happened before. So unless you train your responses and train your brain on how to react under stress in those situations, what am I? Am I someone am I going to have a fight response? Am I going to have a flight response? Am I going to have a freeze response? Am I going to have a fawn response? You don't know which response your body is going to give you if you've never been in or trained for that situation before. And it's so interesting because sometimes it's the big, strong, experienced street fighters or tough guys or whatever are the ones that will have that fawn response, and they stand there and somebody attacks them and they actually stand there with their hands by their sides with their eyes as big as saucers because their physiological response system has taken over. And they think, if somebody ever tried to do that to me, I'd kick their butt, and all those other things we think, but it's not up to what you think. It's up to how your body is going to react. So those physiological things that interfere are really, it's really interesting, but we don't always respond the way we think we're going to.
Yeah, and that's very interesting because I know the fight or flight, but I didn't realize the fawn. And yes, I've heard freeze, but it was not something that's necessarily discussed like a lot. But wow.
And fawn, freeze and fawn are a little bit different. Some people just freeze in shock and they don't know what to do. But fawning can even involve, being extremely compliant and like Rob said, kind of, begging and trying to appease that person. It's amazing really what the body's responses can do to you in those situations. Mm-hmm. We often hear women say, well, I'll just kick him in the junk. There's so much wrong with that. You can say that you're going to do that, but you don't know if you're going to be able to do that, let alone that's not an effective strike. Women, don't do it.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot interesting that was discussed there. So in terms of a situation, I'm just trying to do the myth busting. In terms of a situation, how often, we always think about a woman being attacked or having something happen to them, but how often does this happen to men? What's the frequency rate? And how often do men talk about it?
Well, and that's interesting. And I know Beth is going to jump on here, but I want to first take a shot at intimate partner violence. And that's a 50-50 deal. Nobody wins on that. Males are, out of the reported cases of it, males are responsible for 50%, females are responsible for 50%. When we go to outside in our world, males find themselves facing ego-induced violence that is surrounding social violence, and because they don't have an understanding of how to either de-escalate or their egos will not allow them to de-escalate, they end up finding themselves stuck in the middle of a fight because they friggin' watched John Wick 3 and John Wick did it, and I know now I'm going to be able to do it. And it's the majority of those are all around social violence and ego-induced, just from not understanding what it is that's happening or the male needing to respond to it. I mean, when we're looking at antisocial violence, I would probably tend to say that males are probably attacked more than females. And these would be over resource style attacks where they're being robbed, mugged, that kind of thing. But I mean, unfortunately, the Canadian statistics are showing that, 33% of violent crimes get reported in Canada. And unfortunately, we know today that about 37% of females under the age of 24 will be sexually assaulted. So it's really, you know what, Nicole, it's sad. It sucks. Our society is dealing with a lot right now, and it just doesn't seem to be getting better. And
I'll add to that, you can you can check all the statistics as far as male versus female. You're never going to get an accurate representation of what percentage of males are affected by violence because they don't talk about it. Women have always been encouraged to report and talk about it and that kind of thing. We as a society don't spend as much time acknowledging and encouraging the male species to report and discuss and talk about and seek help for, any violent encounters that they experience. So, a lot of those statistics really are skewed by the fact that men choose not to talk about it.
Even sometimes the attack, right? 2 weeks ago, I was in a school and I was discussing date rape drugs with a senior class, and one of the boys at the end of the class comes over to me and says, "Hey, do you mind if we sit down and talk?" And I was like totally open to this, and he starts telling me a story about his own brother being date raped at a party.
Oh my gosh.
So it's not like Beth said. I mean, we'll never really know because men don't like to talk about it. And I asked him if he reported, and he didn't. He didn't. And oftentimes it's, it's our own embarrassment. We're afraid. We feel violated, and men have a hard time, expressing that, unfortunately, but it's true.
And that's why this is so important that awareness is out there in terms of, self-defense versus martial arts, busting those myths that are out there, and to know that it happens to everyone. Like everybody could potentially be a victim.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that is one of the biggest things that we push. We always tell people, thinking that it isn't going to happen to you, that's not a safety plan.
Not at all.
Ignoring the fact that you are in a potentially dangerous environment, or your intuition is firing off and something's wrong. Ignoring that stuff, that's not an option. That's not a put my head down and keep walking and hope for the best, isn't going to save you.
And violence picks the day and the time, right?
Right.
We have a choice. Either we're not prepared for it or we're prepared for it. But it will pick the day and the time. And
then I'm gonna go back, because this is another there's another interesting point that you brought up, is in the situation, oftentimes your biochemical processes overtake what your instincts might say, right? So your logic or your brain is saying, no, do this, and your body's telling just things are happening. So can you maybe delve into that just a little bit more in terms of the maybe physiological or the psychological aspect of that, and so people can understand, or so listeners can understand what they really need to understand, or what they really need to know, or what myths need to be busted in terms of being faced with that scenario?
Well, I'm going to jump in on one of the first things, is that, it's that where people think that they would respond by, punching someone, physically fighting, punching someone, or kicking them in the groin. So if you think that you have the physical strength on a good day to, as a female or a smaller statured person, to take that fist and punch someone in the right place in the right way in order to debilitate your attacker, you're wrong. But your ego and your reactions and your bravado may tell you that is the right thing to do. And then on top of that, what happens is you get that rush of the hormones that are involved, and your body just completely stops. It just stops. Right, Rob?
Got it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, ego confusing ability. It's a terrible, unfortunate reality that faces too many people. And one thing that I do want to share, because Beth, you were talking about punching, right? And we see it, right? We go in and we do close quarter combative tactics, and we see women punching. And, I have stood in front of a class, and and asked a woman to punch me as hard as she could. And it's happened. And then they stand there and they look at you because they think that you're going to fall down. I mean, evolution has provided me as a male species with a very special gift. I have 186% greater force than the average female. 186% greater force. So it doesn't come down now to, that reverse punch or that straight punch or that vertical punch. It has nothing to do with it. This all comes down to the 5 principles of retaliation, right? And we really need to understand them, and we need to understand the people that we're dealing with, and in the environment and the situations that are occurring and their behavior and everything else. Yeah.
Let's give you a really good example, Nicole, is that, and we've all seen it happens on the movies, but it happens in real life when someone is, they're in a house or they're in a room, and, they're scared and they're running for the door, and they run this way, and then they run that way, and then they run this way, trying to find the door. And then they get to the door and their hands are shaking so much that they can't even, turn the deadbolt to get out. And Rob and I have even done classes where we have had 2 people tell us that they wanted to call 911, but they forgot how. They forgot the number to even call 911. And we think we have our cell phone with us. Parents say it to kids. Husbands say it to wives. Wives say it to coworkers and girlfriends. Take your phone with you. Call me if you need anything. Call me if you get into any trouble. Just call me. We know that, number 1, we have to get that phone out of wherever it is. Number 2, our screen lock is on, so we have to be able to swipe. And then maybe we have to put our password in. And then we have to find our phone app and open it. And then we have to figure out how to call our husband or, what to do. All of that is interfered with by, that the processing of the cortisol dump, the adrenaline, all the stuff that's going on in your body. And you may be one of the people that can't function those things that your memory needs to recall, as well as the small motor skills required to actually be able to manage your phone that way. People pick things up, they drop them, they can't find what they're looking for in that moment. All of those things, that's how your body truly will react. So
it's like a tsunami, a hormone tsunami, biochemical tsunami, and everything is crazy. And you try to,
What a great way to describe it. That's
true.
Yeah, that's
true.
it. That's
true.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So what we try to teach people is to stay out of those situations whenever you possibly can. And I think we did a session with a group of healthcare workers not too long ago in the city of Toronto. And they were basically saying, a lot of them have to take public transit to get to work wherever they go. They don't have vehicles. We talked to a teacher who said that some of the kids in their neighborhoods, if they're not feeling, brave enough to get out of their home neighborhood and get themselves to school, because of the environment, that they don't go to school. So, those are the people that kind of have been labeled the urban warriors, because they have to be behaviorally aware. They have to be situationally aware. They have to be focused on nothing but what's going on around them. And they have to be prepared to deal with, some of those horrific situations that we've seen happen on the TTC, in the back of a cab, at a bus shelter, on the street walking, all of those things. So, those are the people that really need the skills to understand that our society has changed, and at any given moment you may encounter someone who is, for whatever reason, going to make you a victim today.
And you know what? With public transit, I think the largest thing with public transit that I really have to share. And a year ago there was some horrific attacks down on the public transit system. And none of those were defendable, Nicole, not one of them. They were ambush style attacks. They were attacks that were being displayed by individuals with dangerous personality disorders, some with mental illness, some with alcohol. And those types of attacks are not defendable when they start unfolding. But what can make a difference? Not having my face in my phone, not having my back turned to people, not standing on the edge of the subway line waiting for the train, not having my earbuds in listening to music while I'm surrounded in an environment by a couple of hundred people that I don't know, I've never met, I've never been introduced to, and they're capable of doing anything at all. But you know what? If I become now aware and I put my phone away and I keep my head up and I look around, I can see the situation, the environment that I'm in. I may even, and we don't ever want to say guaranteed, but I may even be able to pick up the behavioral indicators that I may be seeing from people that don't seem right. And then I can make a decision, right? And one of the biggest things that Beth and I try and talk to people is about space, because we are in a society, and I'm not from Toronto, and like, bless you, Nicole. I get into Toronto and it's like, let me out. I get downtown and there's people all around me and up banging into me and close to me and walking on my shoes. And you know what? I can't space, right? If I can at any given time keep somewhere in the vicinity of 2 meters distance between me and other people, it elevates my safety like tremendously. And, you know, if I can become aware of the situation, what's happening, the environment that's around me, if I can identify behavioral aspects of people and what they're demonstrating, and I can control space and be aware, I can really improve my safety. I mean, I don't want to say, a guarantee, but it really elevates it tremendously.
And, you know, something else that people do is they try to make themselves small. They put their hood up, their body language, they fold their shoulders in, they put their hands on their lap, they put their head down, and they think, if I don't look at you, you can't see me, those kinds of things. And that, we really recommend that you do the opposite. Make eye contact, look at that person, say hello. People often talk about, walking with a purpose, and they think that walking with a purpose means walking down the street with your shoulders swinging and, acting like Arnold Schwarzenegger walking down the street. That's not it. Your purpose is to identify yourself as an aware, confident person with your eyes open that could potentially identify an attacker or, react to a situation. And those are not the people that victims are made of. Those aren't the people that predators choose for their victims. They look for people who are appearing intimidated and small and faded into the background. So, sit at the front of the bus. If you are uncomfortable, get off. Get back on at the next stop if somebody makes you uncomfortable. If somebody says, "Can I sit here beside you?" and you don't want that person to sit there beside you, you tell them they can actually have your seat, and you get up and you move. And all of those proactive, confident, acknowledgeable behaviors will help you in that enclosed environment of the transit system, which, we have no control of that environment once we're in it. We can only control our actions, but being aware and proactive is the best thing that we can do.
It's almost like setting that mindset before you leave the house. You have this mindset that I'm going to be aware. I'm not going to be in my head. Like everybody has lots of things going on. If you're upset or something happened, you need to kind of take yourself out of that space and be aware of your surroundings, be aware of who's around you. and not be invisible, and make sure that, say you're on the bus or the subway, saying hi and you feel uncomfortable, saying hi to the bus driver so they recognize you, or they know that, oh, I remember that person. Those kind of little things just to...
Yeah, exactly. And what people don't realize is, Nicole, that is self-defense.
Mm-hmm.
That is the very first level, the very basic, foundation of what self-defense is it's all about you. It's not about fighting and kicking and how strong you are. It really starts with you.
And then checking out what's behind you, what's ahead of you, just your surroundings. Even when you're on the bus, seeing what's happening outside, because you never know, you might have to go back that way or meet up on it. Just
100%. It's the same as, where you park your car in the daytime is not the same at 9:00 at night when you go to get in your car. Oh, your car hasn't moved, but everything around it has changed. The people are gone. The other cars are gone. The lights are out. That street light doesn't work. Like, it's a totally different place. So yeah, it's huge to understand what's going on around you and behind you and later and all that stuff.
Exactly. No, I like that analogy, because I'm thinking you're on a bus, but all of this applies to no matter where you are.
Totally does.
What type of yeah.
Totally.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
I know Rob is busting to talk about
go ahead.
tenants.
Yes. That's what I was heading to next.
What do you say?
Well, you know what? I feel like full of empathy for tenants today. I do. Our housing crisis is not getting better. It's getting worse. Rent increases are not getting better. However, being a property owner and having to deal with a tenant who, may have problems paying rent, who may not be looking after the property or may be damaging the property. I think oftentimes the property owner responds poorly with that. And it becomes a challenge now between the property owner and the tenant. The property owner threatens, challenges, and the tenant responds, all based on ego and social violence, right? And I think if, as a property owner, if you're an investor and you're experiencing this, probably one of the best things that you can do is not make verbal contact with the tenant. Do it all by letter. I understand getting a lawyer to write a letter is expensive. Send them a letter. Send it registered mail. Start keeping a track of it. And at the end of this, you will eventually be successful in removing the tenant or getting your money or whatever the problem may be. But in the interim, you're not putting yourself at risk of facing a potential violent situation. And we are hearing about this more and more and more all the time. We have met realtors who have been beaten up with 2x2s by tenants, hit in the back of the head by hammers with tenants. And oftentimes it's because of the challenging nature of the situation that's unfolding. We have a property owner or an investor who needs their money to make their payments, to pay their mortgage and all of that. And we have a tenant who maybe for some reason can't make their rent. Then all of a sudden we get into the threats and the challenging and all of that. And then we end up actually developing a tenant who, because of the landlord-tenant board, doesn't have to pay rent. And, when we challenge and threaten them, this is what happens. So it's best not to. It's best just to deal with this in a very professional manner through letter. Try not to allow your own ego to get involved with it. Try not to get into the challenge and threatening. And I think if we approach it And I don't mean this to sound wishy-washy, but I think if we approach it in possibly the most empathetic way that we can, and they're humans, they're people, and if we treat them like people, we'll probably have a much better response. But it's tough, it's tough. And just before we came on, I told you of an experience I just went through with my own client and a tenant that she had, and he was a very, very dangerous guy. And it just came down to the point of, don't challenge him anymore. Mm-hmm. Report him. We have services around us that we can call and report and get assistance. And in this case, there were several phone calls made. I ended up making one and making a visit to the police station as well. And at the end of it, it got looked after, but that situation was probably by far the worst one that I had ever seen. This individual, he wasn't well. Mm-hmm. He just wasn't socially stable at all. But yeah, it's tough.
I'm understanding that our realtors are often in the same situation as our landlords trying to vet their tenants. And, what we tell them is do your research. You're going to ask them for ID and fill out an application. But we want you to look at that photo ID and not say, well, this is John Smith on the picture on the driver's license, and that's John Smith on the application. So, it's all good, and he looks like a nice guy, or she looks like a nice person. And we are going to recommend that you check out all of their social media, drive by their place of work, check out their current address. Does their story make sense? Tenants will have a script. They know what you want to hear and what you don't want to hear. Ask them questions that take them outside of that script, and listen for the ums and the uhs and the double talk and that kind of thing that is, going to make you understand maybe your answers aren't rolling off the tip of their tongue like the truth is. We know that a lie is really only 3 questions deep. And if you can continue down one avenue of conversation, you're going to find out if you're dealing with somebody that's telling you the truth or not telling you the truth. And when you're meeting them, prospective tenants, to show them the home, understand that even though you've spoken to them on the phone, you've called their references, you've looked over their application, that person is a stranger. You might be in a beautiful apartment complex or, at a lovely farmhouse or wherever with them, instead of being in a dark alley or a dark parking lot, but they are still a stranger to you. And just because they look nice, just because they speak nice, just because they act nice, doesn't mean they are nice. Mm-hmm. Being nice doesn't equal being a good person. Niceness is a strategy. We all use it. It's been a strategy of human interaction since we were, 2 years old, trying to make friends with the people that our parents took us to see. Be nice, be nice, be nice, and you'll have friends. So niceness is ingrained in us, but it doesn't equal goodness. So when you are, looking for a tenant or vetting a tenant, you must do your homework. You must listen to your intuition when you meet these people. You must be aware of, all of your surroundings. Leave the doors unlocked. Don't take someone into the home and lock the doors. There are so many things, that we need to know when we're dealing with strangers in those enclosed environments. Just don't forget that those people are strangers and may not always have good intentions.
Yes. No, thank you, Beth. That's awesome. And Rob, that was excellent. And that kind of caps off in terms of when I talk to landlords, potential landlords, treat it like a business. You need to treat everything like a business and always be professional. And as Rob, as you said, to take that ego out of it, and really, look at things very businesslike.
Yep. Oh, it makes it a lot easier on the investor and the landlord, and it doesn't provide the tenant the option to retaliate, right? So it's kind of, I know it's a little bit of a different way of thinking about it, but I think if people try it, they'll find that it works better.
And it's a little easier to try it if you throw your personal safety as a priority in there as well, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you both. That was amazing. And I just wanted to say, Rob and Beth hold workshops, in-person live workshops, and online classes. So if you ever want to get in touch with them, you can reach them at Street Safe Self-Defense. And they have general self-defense, corporate training, women's self-defense, realtor safety, and high school self-defense. So please check them out to learn more.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It was a real pleasure meeting you.
Happy holidays.
You too. Happy holidays. Thank you.